Hey everyone, Andrew here, and I managed to read another book. It's not much to crow about, I know, but I used to read a lot, and between work and everything else, my level of reading has dropped dramatically. As you can tell if you watch this channel, because I went from doing only book reviews to doing books and movies to doing just movies. And I managed to finish a book from one of my favorite authors, that is Gena Showalter. Back in 2022, I went through her most popular series, The Lords of the Underworld. I talked about books 1 through 13 because I'd read those at that time. And I'm going to include a link in the bottom below about that. So if you want to know about this series and its plot and its ideas, I highly recommend looking at that link and watching that video because it's a lot, but it's a really good series and I highly recommend it. And I just read the 14th book in the series, The Darkest Warrior. Now, I decided, when I do these kind of book series, if I do read some more onto it, I'm just going to do individual videos for those next books instead of reading a chunk and then trying to summarize them again, because I'm kind of bad at that. I found, and that's made me sad, because there's book series that I would love to talk to you guys about, but I don't remember them well enough to do so. And I don't have the time or the energy to reread them to get to be able to tell you. With The Darkest Warrior, this is the 14th book in the series. For those of you that didn't go and rewatch it, basically the idea of the entire Lords of the Underworld series is that a group of immortals found Pandora's box, opened it, unleashed all of the demons, which were all of the sins, and the gods, to keep the demons in check, fused those demons into the immortals who opened the box, as well as people down in the underworld. And now they are immortal warriors cursed with a demon that makes them do things or say certain things or react to certain things in certain ways. The events of this book 14th actually start during the events of the last book, Darkest Promise. So in book 13, we know that one of the friends of the Lords of the Underworld, a woman named Gillian Shaw, who is a 17-year-old girl, 18 nowish, and she basically befriended Lords of the Underworld, and she ends up getting very, very sick and starts to slowly die. Her friend slash love interest slash mentor figure, William the Everrandy, tries to take care of her, takes her into the underworld, tries to find, uses his power down there to find curers and healers and people to try to fix it. But it becomes very clear that the only way to save her is to make the immortal bond with her, which is basically tying your soul into theirs. Thus, it would make her immortal, but it would tie her to you, and if one of you dies, the other one dies. And it has very strong connections and possible ramifications. William is unwilling to do this because he has been prophesied that his true love would lead to his death or something of that nature, and he's been very wary of falling in love in any way, shape, or form. Doesn't keep him from having sex with anything that has two legs, but so he's unwilling to do that. Meanwhile, while she's being sick and slowly dying, Gillian is being visited by this immortal satyr-like person who has goat legs and a human torso and horns, named Puck. And he is the keeper of the demon of indifference. And he tells her flat out, you are dying. There is a way to save you, but William is not going to do that. If you agree to do it with me, you will gain immortality, you will gain your life, and I can guarantee that you will get to, have the life that you want and have the future that you desire. She agrees to do the bond, and they basically become wedded spiritually and connected through the soul, and she gains his immortality. That is what the events of what happened during book 13. During this book, we start out a couple years before that. In fact, many years before that, where we meet Puck the Undefeated. So Puck the Undefeated is living in a separate dimension known as Amaranthia. A warrior there, and he had the ability to shapeshift. He had all of this power, and he was an unrivaled warrior that was nearly undefeatable. He is the son of the current king of Amaranthia, who has been ruling with an iron fist, and Puck has been leading a force against his father to gain control and become the new king of Amaranthia. He is assisted by his younger brother Sin, who he has a deep emotional connection to. Both Puck and Sin went to a seer when they were younger, and the seer told them that one of them would find their true beloved queen, and with her by his side, they would kill the other brother. Puck has been made it very clear that he is not looking at any women. He has never any interest in betraying his brother. His brother is his most important thing in this world. He has no intent to ever have a queen or to betray his brother. One night after a successful battle, Sin comes to visit Puck. He presents Puck with this box. Puck opens it up, and he sees a black smoke come out of it and go into his body. This causes his body to morph and change, and his ability to shapeshift goes away, and he becomes the more satyr-like person. And Sin reveals that Puck has now been possessed by the demon of indifference. That by having the demon inside of him, Puck will never look at another woman. He will have no interest in women. Thus, the prophecy will never come to be, and they can be safe and together forever. Sin does not take into account that he may still have some emotions, as this betrayal royally pisses him off, and he leaves and doesn't come back. Puck basically travels through Amaranthian for years, killing sprees, unable to have any kind of real depth of emotions without it causing him pain from his demon. So he starts developing this technique where he uses his own magic to basically freeze his brain over, thus keeping him from being able to have strong emotions, but it tends to make him more self-centered and has a harder time focusing on and doing the things that he needs to do. He goes to another seer and goes and talks to her, and the seer tells him that the only way to defeat Sin is that he has to find a woman named Gillian Shaw, that through Gillian he will find a warrior who will live and die for her, and that warrior will help Puck overthrow Sin and become king of Amaranthia. When he travels into our realm and finds Gillian, and he finds her with William the Everrandy, he is like, okay, that's the warrior who will, live and die for her. So he is the one who will help me to fill the prophecy. So he starts courting Gillian to make the bond with him instead of with William. Once she does, and she agrees to that, he basically throws her over his shoulder and drags her into Amaranthia, despite the fact that she's fighting and pleading to go home. He leaves her in Amaranthia with his two allies, Winter, the keeper of selfishness, and Cameron, the keeper of obsession. Basically, Winter can't care about anyone but herself. She can only think about her own selfish needs. And then Cameron, if any single thought or idea or thing comes into his brain, he has to obsess on it until it's completed and finished. Puck travels back to our world to find William to convince him to come join and fight on his behalf to take over the kingdom and save Gillian. He finds William, and William does not like any of this, and he's like, I can't kill you, but I can certainly make you hurt. So he tries to harm Puck, and then Puck presents William with this option. It's like, basically, I have this mystical item that I've discovered, which is this ancient pair of shears that allows one to destroy one's fate. Basically, it allows to dissever connections to things of that nature. If you help me defeat my brother, I will sever my connection with Gillian, and she can go with you and be on her merry way. And William doesn't necessarily like this agreement, but goes along with it, and they travel to Amaranthia. Amaranthia works on Narnia timeline, where basically like an hour here is a day or two over there. So he's been gone for about 2 weeks, so 400 years have passed. Gillian is now leading the group of people that Puck left her with, and she has become a badass warrior lady who uses her skill and knowledge to rescue women in Amaranthia, because in Amaranthia, women are considered second-class citizens and are basically treated like cattle. So she goes in, rescues the women, kills the men, brings them out, and then the women are free to go about they want, and a lot of them stay with her and become part of her tribe that she refers to as the Glamazons, who basically, she becomes a warrior for women's justice. But she also has a connection to Puck still. So she they are still connected, and the demon can kind of travel between the two of them. But she's also developed this sort of mirror opposite to what happens to Puck, whereas Puck uses his ice to turn him into a cold, heartless person. She has a tendency to give in to her rage and go on rampages and killing sprees. When Puck and William show up, Gillian is happy and elated and, starts, hugs William, so happy to see him. But she notices that things are a little different, that the way she looks at him and the way she feels about him is not the same as it had been 400 years prior. However, when she looks at Puck, she immediately has arousal and interest and sexual feelings towards him. And Puck is starting to have feelings for her of the similar kind, and he, in order to appease her, because she does not like when he freezes his brain, he stops doing that so he can start feeling emotions and having connections. William tries to get closer to Gillian. He's, telling her, it's like, oh, yeah, I know you're feeling weird. I know you're having these feelings for the satyr man. That is the connection talking. That is the spell. Once it is severed, you will know your true feelings, and you will know that you don't feel that way for him. Gillian really doesn't believe that, doesn't really have any interest in that. But they all end up traveling together, and Puck and Gillian start getting closer and closer and start having physical relations with each other. William doesn't like this, and at one point basically forces himself on Gillian and kisses her, which is a bit rough to read, as you remember that Gillian is a victim of rape multiple times by people she's supposed to trust. And yeah, it's a rough scene, but it's just a kiss. William pulls away, and both of them are like, that was gross. We should not do that. And William slowly starts to accept the fact that Gillian isn't meant for him, that she may be meant to be with Puck. They start to travel to where Sin is, which is his own private kingdom, where he's been ruling as an evil dictator, and he is protected by this labyrinth surrounding his area. They all travel into the area, but they get separated. William ends up getting transported to another dimension, and the only ones to make it all the way through are Gillian and Puck. They have lots of sex, as is tradition for a Showalter book, and basically throughout the course of this event, he eventually realizes that he doesn't really actually need William, that the warrior who would live and die for Gillian is him, and that he also realizes that he has to sever the connection between them, because as long as that connection is there, they will never be able to fully trust whether or not they love each other because they truly love each other, or if it's just a side effect of the spell. Gillian does not like any of that. She is super happy and finally has her life the way she wants it, and does not want to lose the family and the connection that she has now. They end up getting into the fight with Sin. Sin uses his shape-shifting to try and pretend to be the other's mate, but both Gillian and Puck immediately know that there's something wrong with the other one and figure out who the wrong one is very easily, and they manage to defeat Sin and take the crown. As they are starting to connect to get close to each other again, Sin gets up to attack again, but William shows up and knocks out Sin, thus fulfilling his part of the prophecy, giving the crown to Puck. Puck presents the shears to William, who severs the demon from inside of Puck, and then he takes the demon from inside of Puck and shoves it into Sin, who is still alive. Okay, so earlier in the book, we found out that Sin has been possessed by the demon of paranoia, and that is what led to him betraying his brother and all of the horrible things that have been happening around Amaranthia. Only at the end of the book do Puck or any of the other main characters find this out, and now Sin is alive with both sets of demons in him, paranoia and indifference. Then William agrees to sever the connection between Puck and Gillian. Gillian is sobbing, does not want this to happen, but the connection is severed, and the two immediately realize that they are truly in love with each other, and that this connection really wasn't the factor in that. So they confess each other's love to him. Puck becomes king of Amaranthia, and Gillian becomes his queen, and they live happily ever after the end. So this book is good. It is not great. And it has a number of stuff in it that works and doesn't work. My biggest problem I kind of have with this is that it's kind of a bit of a wasted potential story. Because you have Puck, the Keeper of Indifference, which sounds like it should be a really interesting thing that would keep him from having a hard time connecting to other people and having emotional reactions. Like, every time he starts to have a thought, the thing just cuts off, or he starts to have feelings for something, it just gets cut off and goes blank. But the way it's written and the way he comes off is, I have all of the emotions, I feel things very deeply, but I just shove them down really hard and then freeze them in place so I don't have to deal with it. And it's like, that's not terrible, but it's also like not that interesting. It like, we had sort of that before. Like, we had a woman on one of the other ones who was all ice, and that sort of was her personality. And it's just like, okay. And then you have Gillian, who is a really good character in the other books. Like, she is this 17-year-old girl who was emotionally and physically abused and raped by her stepfather and stepbrothers. And that would be a huge factor in trusting someone and having a sexual relationship with someone and being with someone. And she skipped over that entirely. Like 400 years passed, oh, I'm over it. Now I'm ready to have sex with my hot satyr boyfriend. Also, we took a character who was very human, very kind of normal, and then they just made her into a warrior woman. We have a lot of warrior women on this series. This one is not the best. Like, I like Gillian. I think it works. I like the idea of her going from this abuse victim into this warrior fighting for abuse victims, but it's lacking something, and it does not work in that sense. It does not help that this book does feel a bit done before. And I'm like, we're 14 books in. I get the fact that there is a pattern to these books, and I accept that pattern, and I even like the pattern to an extent. But the last 3 books in the series was main character travels to other world, falls in love with someone there, becomes ruler of that said new world. Like, legitimately, we had the Fey world 2 books ago. The last one was like a weird demon dimension one. Like, and even Torrens was kind of that, where he traveled to a weird dimension and met a god, an uber god, and joined with her. Like, it's just, it's a lot of the same again, and there just really wasn't enough new in this to make me say that it was great. It's good. It's very good. I like parts of it. I like the characters. Like, the side characters are pretty good. Winter and Cameron are pretty nice. Puck is actually a really interesting character when you look at him besides that whole him freezing his brain for the demon thing, but like the way he looks, the way he fights, the way he thinks about things is kind of interesting. They had this really cool thing of describing him where it's like, because he was indifferent and because he didn't care about things to a certain extent, he always had a hard time, with keeping weapons and having weapons. So what he would do is he put razor blades into his hair so that he could use that as a weapon and pull those out at any point to use as a weapon. That actually was a really cool aspect of it. It has a very monster romance thing to it, which I really like, which kind of makes me annoyed that the cover for this book is this. Like, it's just a normal looking guy. Like, you really? Like, granted, this is probably what he looked like at the beginning of the story and at the end of the story when he gained his shape-shifting powers back after the demon was out of him. But you could have easily done a sexy satyr on top of this. Like, it wouldn't have even been hard. Like, fur pants and horns. Like, there are sexy monster books out there. We can do this. Come on. Like, satyr isn't even that hard. He's mostly human. I did like the fact that Gillian really liked that look of his, and that even when he gained his ability to go back into a human form, she would occasionally ask for him to turn back into that other form and just lie in the fur and be comfortable and safe. And I was like, that was kind of sweet. It's kind of like if the Beast from Beauty and the Beast could switch back and forth, and she just occasionally wanted him to be the old way. Like, I liked that. That was cute. I don't necessarily like what they did with William and Gillian's relationship in that. Like, because the entire earlier books were kind of setting up that they had a connection that could be romance, in a sense. And I'm not 100% against it for that. I always took it more as a brother sister thing myself. I could definitely see Gillian falling in love with him, but I did not see it as necessarily from William's side. And then to see William in this book go from that guy, that almost brother sister feel for her, to the obsessive ex-boyfriend who's like, no, I'm better than your new boyfriend. I deserve you. You deserve to be with me. Was just felt off and did not really work well for his character, and I did not care for it. I don't hate this book because they broke up, because like I said, it wasn't as big of a factor to me. I do know there's a lot of reviewers that didn't like this book for that reason. I like I saved my opinion on whether or not William and Gillian should have ended up together after we see who William ends up with, which should be like the next book or two. I think if they do a good job, I will forgive it easily, but at this point I'm kind of like on it. I don't like the Amaranthia was not that great of an interesting of a place. It was basically a giant desert with a somewhat labyrinth that they got through fairly easily, honestly. Like it was okay. And that's kind of my feeling about the whole book was like it's okay, it's good. It could have been great and it just didn't. And it just kind of lags in the middle. Like I said, this book took me about a year to finish, and I read like the first 300 pages, and then I just stopped and I didn't read for like 7 months, and it didn't have the hook to bring me back and make me want to come back and read it, reread it really hard, and that's a shame to me because Showalter used to be the best at that. Like I read through most of the books in the series in like a week and a half at most because they were so addictive and so hard to put down and so interesting. And then just this one really was a hard one to really pick up on sometimes. It's just like, and I'm not as invested as I'd like to be. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I finished it. I think it was a very good book. I do recommend it. I don't think it's the worst even of this series, but it does have some flaws and makes it a bit tough. That's just my opinion, though. What do you all think? Do you like the series? Do you like the book? Do you hate this book? Did you hate the fact that William and Gillian did not end up together? Let me know in the comments below. Happy watching, happy reading. I will see you all next time. Bye!